We'd like to encourage everyone to download our New Life app today. To find it, go to the App Store and type in New Life CC. Our app has a lot of great features. You can download the sermon notes, you can watch sermons, or listen to them. You can also give directly through the app, turn in a prayer request, and get Facebook updates. It even includes a Bible app with it. So take advantage of this great resource today.
We are really excited to share a great free online service with you that will help you take one step closer to Jesus. It's called Right Now Media. Right Now Media is the Netflix of Bible study material with over 14,000 videos. These videos will help you in parenting, finances, and in leadership. It has great videos for your marriage, for your relationships, and even great videos for your kids, all in one place. We are excited to be able to give it to you absolutely free. You can sign up for Right Now Media under the Media section on our app today. We hope you will dive in for your own spiritual growth as you take one step closer to Jesus.
I'm going to ask you to turn to a passage that is somewhat famous, and you will probably know it. Mostly if you've been to a wedding. It's a passage that is often read during a wedding ceremony, and it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And we're actually not going to get to it till a little bit later in the message, but I want you to be there and see this, because this whole idea of love, and this chapter that the Apostle Paul wrote is often called the love chapter. And here's what's a little bit misleading about it is it often does get read at weddings, and it kind of gets moved into the romantic realm, which is really great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But just understand this, that it was never written to be a romantic passage. It was written that we could really see the muscle and bone of what love is really all about. And we've been in this series called Reset. And just to kind of get you up to speed, a few weeks ago, we began taking inventory of our lives and looking at what that is to start over and hit that reset. And so on Easter weekend, we kicked off this series looking at our connection with God, resetting that connection. And some of you even made a choice on that weekend to follow after Jesus Christ, and that's amazing. And then the next week, we talked about resetting the way we think. And in that message, we talked about what we think determines how we live. And there was this one line that I love, and I saw, many of you wrote this down, I saw it online as some of you were posting on social media, but it was this whole idea that our unseen thoughts create visible consequences. Let me say that again. Our unseen thoughts create visible consequences in our life. And so how can our thinking line up with what God wants? Last week, we got into an area that was tough. We talked about forgiveness. And forgiveness is challenging, and forgiveness takes time. And I will tell you this, true forgiveness takes God to give us the strength to help us through that. But remember, we talked about how in forgiveness, we get to walk out of that prison of resentment and be free. And if you were here last week, I reminded you of that ride at Disneyland, Pirates of the Caribbean, where the guys are in the jail and the dog has the keys and they're, trying to get the dog because if they can just get out of the jail. And here's what's funny. Someone from our church went to Disneyland last week and they took a picture on Pirates of the Caribbean of the dog and they said, here it is. And it's like, I know, I've been there before. But here's what I want you to know about walking out of that prison. And we ended last week with this, is that the door is actually open. Jesus has opened that door for us. We don't have to stay in that prison of resentment anymore. He's made a way for us to do it. But will we walk in that? Will we receive and offer forgiveness? Will we kind of let people kind of into God's hands and simply walk free? And so we talked about that. And today, we're going to talk about a reset in our relationships. Now, again, going back to that first week, we talked about a relationship, but it was our relationship with Christ and how he has come to pay the price for us and set us free and do all that. But today, we're going to focus on the other relationships in our life. Because most of us would probably say, I'm trying to figure out the whole God, relationship and trying to figure that out. But the hard one is the people that I see every day, right? It's my friends, it's my spouse, it's kids, it's parents, it's all of those relationships that are challenging, right? Those are the hard ones for us. So we're going to dive into that tonight. I think it's a pretty safe assumption to say that all of us here, I would guess, have a computer of one kind or another. Now, maybe it's a home, laptop or desktop or something like that, or maybe it's handheld, but whatever it is. But did you know that when it comes to the computers in your life, there are actually two different types of resets that can happen? There's the intentional reset and the, do it with me, unintentional, unintentional reset. Now, the unintentional reset takes place when you're cruising along, and if you have a real computer, so you have a Mac, and you're doing your work, and you're just going along, and suddenly out of nowhere, you get what? You get the spinning beach ball, right? And you're going, wow, what in the world happened? And you're frustrated with it, right? Or if you have, a second level computer, like a PC, all of a sudden it stops working and you get what's called the BSOD. Does anyone know what that is? The blue screen of death, right? That sounds fun, doesn't it? When you're working along on your computer. And when all that happens, it seems like the apocalypse, right? And it's starting right on your computer. And it always happens at the worst time, like there's ever really a good time, but you're downloading photos, you're working on that project for work, you're doing something for school. I've had it happen to me, and all of a sudden, boom, unintentional reset. And all of a sudden you're like, and you lost your work, you lost time, you lost information, all those things, and it's frustrating. That's the unintentional. The intentional reset is when you're cruising along and your computer may be running a little slower than normal because you stop and you look and you have 37 apps open on your computer all at once, and you think, I got to reset this. So you close all your apps and you shut it down, you hit restart, and boom, it's a good boom though this time, and it's working again, and it's working like it's supposed to work. That's an intentional reset. Well, if we're talking about hitting reset on relationships, let me just tell you this. Unintentional resets cause us to lose valuable things. It means that we have to start over. It means that we're often damaged or hurt or wounded in some way. And we end up being frustrated, maybe even angry, because relationships are causing all of this turmoil. But an intentional reset is when we are proactively taking steps right now, before things get out of hand, before things blow up. We're going to take steps right now to bring health and peace and perspective to our relationships. See, the truth is we sometimes let our relationships become congested and cluttered with way too many kind of life apps, right? Too many things going on, and they become a distraction. And before we know it, our relationships are just not how we wanted them to be and can even become destructive. And so we just simply want to hit reset. And yet we all know it's not really a simple thing. Did you know that even God hit the reset button with his relationship with us? It's the Easter story. It's the fact that the world was broken and that we were broken. So Jesus came to be the sacrifice for us, to make us whole and to heal us again and restore us into that relationship that had been damaged. In fact, look on your sheet, 2 Corinthians 5:18. It says this: all of this comes from the God who settled the relationship between us and him. And then here's this part that we need to hear tonight. And then called us to settle our relationships with each other. Let me read it again. So all of this comes from the God who settled the relationship between us and him. What did he do? He sent Christ and he restored it, made a way to be reconciled in this. Then he says, I want you now to go and reconcile and settle the relationships in your life. Of course, the question is, that sounds really nice, but how do I do that? So I want us to look tonight at 4 areas that we can target with our relationship reset, okay? These are practical, this is where we live, but I want you to write these down. The first one is this. It's this area of selflessness, okay? Write that down, selflessness. And here's what you need to understand with that. My selfless choices will strengthen my relationships. My selfless choices will strengthen my relationships. In the New Testament, in the book of Philippians, the Apostle Paul, again, was writing to this church, and he began to write about the interactions that they were having one to another. Now, often in Paul's writing, he would start by giving us theology, that we would understand this relationship between us and God. And then, about partway through his writing, he would always do this switch, and he'd say, so now you understand this between you and God, but let's get it into the practical world and what it looks like in your friendships, in your marriages, and in your workplace. I mean, he would just really get to all these practical areas of our life. So in Philippians 2:4, here's what Paul said. He said, don't think only about your own affairs, but be interested in others too and in what they are doing. So he's saying, listen, this is not all about you, but it's about what can happen through you. And can I tell you, this is the heart of Jesus Christ. The whole reason for him coming and dying on the cross is because he was making a way for us to be restored to the Father in relationship. What was he doing? He was thinking about us. He was putting us first. Why in the world would he do that? Because he loves us that much. And you may be here tonight and you're thinking, Dave, you have no idea what I've done. And I say this frequently because people will sometimes challenge, and I know what it's like to sit in a group of people and you're hearing someone talk and it's like, yeah, you don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. And you're right. You're right. I don't know all the ins and outs and the struggles and the pain and the hurt and the brokenness in your life. I don't know any of that. But you don't know my God, who's bigger than all of that, who can restore, who can bring healing, who can bring hope. That's how big our God is. And so when I say, why in the world would God do that? Because he loves us that much. Understand this, he loved you and I so much that he sent his only son to make a way for us. So this is an important relational thing. In fact, in Mark 10, Jesus said this, for even I, the Son of Man, came here not to be served, but to serve others and to give my life as a ransom for many. He's saying, listen, this is not just about what I can get, it's about what I'm giving. And so he calls us into that same thing. I don't know if you've ever wondered why we tend to lean towards being selfish and self-absorbed. And I think for many of us, it's because we're insecure and we're a little bit afraid. And so what we do is we shut the doors, we close everything off, we put a nice facade out in front, we kind of wear the nice masks, because the truth is this, we don't want to let anyone in because we're afraid they may reject us, they may hurt us, or maybe we even see ourselves as not being worthy of much. We really don't see much value in ourselves. So we keep everyone at arm's length. And I'll tell you this, that insecurity causes us to live in this selfish mode. It causes us only to think about ourselves. And I think it's kind of funny because we can see people who are super outgoing and extroverted, and you may look at them and go, they're so egotistical and they're so selfish, because they're kind of the life of the party because they're only thinking of themselves, right? And then we turn around and we look at someone who's introverted and shy, but do you realize that's just another form of selfishness? Because they're only thinking of themselves in that. And living selfless is not about being extroverted, and it's not about being introverted. It's not about whether I like being in crowds or I would just prefer a couple of people around. It's about whether I think about others and whether I'll extend grace and kindness. Now, when I talk about selflessness, I want to be real clear here. Don't confuse selfless with being an enabler. Don't confuse selfless with being codependent. And don't confuse selfless or serving someone else with this, I'm supposed to fix people. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you can't fix people. And if you haven't learned that yet, let me just save you a boatload of pain. You can't fix anybody. Think about it this way. How good are you at fixing yourself? I can't even do much here. How in the world am I going to fix my spouse? And yet, don't we try to do that? We try to fix husband and wife and kids. We try to, and really all we're doing in that is we're just kind of living in this codependent, enabling kind of way. See, God is the only one that can bring true transformation. I even sometimes have people will come up to me and they'll talk about, relationships or where they're at in their life. And they'll say, Dave, I just want to find someone that makes me happy. And I always say, another person can't make you happy. And we keep looking for Mr. Right or, Miss Right, or I don't know, is there a name for that? We just keep looking for that person who's just going to bring it all to the table. And what we do is we go on social media or we watch the movies or we see someone else. We go, I wish I had someone like that. And you don't even know what they're like behind closed doors. You don't know what they're like in the private moments of their life. See, because another person can't fix you and another person can't make you happy. So the question really is, what kind of person am I becoming and what can I give away? See, living selflessly allows me to extend appreciation and value to someone else. The second thing is this. So selflessness. The second one is boundaries. Boundaries. I will create healthy boundaries in my relationships. It's a challenge for us. This is our to-do list. I'm going to create healthy boundaries in my relationships. You may not be aware of this, but the Bible actually talks about boundaries in our relationships. In fact, the very first relationship, the most important one, when we become a follower of Jesus, we need healthy boundaries when it comes to our relationship with the world. And by the way, when I say world, or when you ever hear or read where the Bible talks about the world, it's talking about people and places and things that are not of God, or those things that will distract us or pull us away from God. Right? Because if you read the Bible, you'll see things like, stay away from the world and things like that. And you think, well, man, I love going over to Monterey and see the ocean. So is that like a bad thing? No. That's not a bad thing. It's anything that we encounter that pulls us away from God. And Jesus even said that we are to be in the world, but not of the world. Okay? This is where we live. This is where life happens. But we don't want it to kind of seep in and have it drive our values and our core beliefs and who we are. So we're going to be in the world, but not of the world. In fact, here's what John said. He said, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. Again, he's not talking about beautiful mountains and sunsets and things like that. He's talking about that part, the craving of this kind of inner part of me, the lust of the eyes, the boasting about what I have and what I can do, all those things that pull me away from God. What's John telling us? He's saying, keep your eyes on the things of God. Keep your eyes on the things that matter, the things that are important, the things that are wonderful and beautiful. Keep your eyes on those things. And here's the deal. If we're not careful, then relationships that were meant to be a gift from God start taking the place of God. Let me say that again. If we're not careful, relationships that were meant to be this gift from God start taking the place of God. And when they do, we're left in this empty place. Because I'll tell you, God should not be missing from our life because a great relationship begins, right? This person steps into our life and like, wow, that's wonderful. But suddenly God shouldn't be absent. We shouldn't kind of lock him away in the corner. Something different needs to happen. Friendships, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouse, even children. We try to make them fill what they were never meant to fill. So how do we set boundaries? How do we even know we're walking in the right space and putting the right guardrails? Well, I'm going to just throw a couple questions out for you, okay? These are not on your sheet or anything like that. I just want you to hear them and wrestle around with them. And some of them may hit you more than others. So if you want to write them down, feel free to do that. But the first question I would ask you is this. Do I like the person that I am in this relationship? Do I like the person I am in this relationship? And you may think, I don't know if I can even trust myself. And you're probably right in that. So here's the way we gauge that. You ask godly people in your life who know you well to say, am I staying true to who I am? Is this relationship drawing me closer to God? Is it healthy, or is it pulling me away? Don't ask just anyone. This isn't the question you throw out at work. This is not the question you throw out on Facebook, okay? I'm just telling you that in advance. Don't do that. You go to people, and this is important, you go to godly people who are going to speak truth to you, who absolutely love you and want the best for you. Do I like the person I am in this relationship? Here's the second question. Does this person that I'm in the relationship, do they want the best for me? Do they want the best for me? Or are they only out for what they can get? Do you find that they're taking advantage of you? Do you find that they're using you? Are they abusing you? And if you're sitting here tonight and you're trying to justify someone who is abusive or using you in a relationship, or maybe you're just thinking, I'm just going to wait for Dave to move on through this because you don't even want to answer it, right? Can I tell you something? Run. Run from that relationship. Stop trying to justify it. Stop trying to, well, it's not always. If someone's abusing you and using you, it's time to move. It's time to go. Here's a third question for you. Do I find myself compromising standards that I know are best? Do I find myself compromising standards? In order to gain acceptance, in order to gain approval, are you playing kind of fast and loose with what really matters? Or maybe here's another way of looking at it. Do you find yourself justifying actions you know are wrong? You know they cross some line in your heart and soul. You know they cross some line, biblically speaking. And you keep trying to justify it, but you're doing that because you just don't want to lose the relationship? Are you going further sexually just because of pressure? Are you doing things where you have to silence your heart and your conscience and the Holy Spirit? Listen, if that person you're in the relationship really loves you, if they truly care about you, they will not pressure you to compromise. In fact, their desire will be for you to strengthen your convictions and your following after Jesus Christ. And I know some of you are sitting there thinking, Dave, please tell me where this person is who won't be pressuring me, who won't do that. And you're thinking, they're not out there. Can I tell you this? This is hard, so I understand it. Would you just trust God with this? There are people out there, I talk to people frequently on both sides, both sexes, male and female. And they're going, where are those guys? Where are those girls? And it's like, you guys are looking for each other, you know? You're right there. But here's the problem. You keep thinking God's not going to come through. You keep thinking he's got it in for you. You keep thinking he's ignored you or it hasn't happened. Think about it this way. Maybe God is preparing you for something that would just be more than your wildest dreams, more than you ever could have imagined. I'm not talking about perfection, but he's got something for you. Trust him in that. And don't compromise just because you're impatient. Let God bring you something great. The fourth question, this will be the last one I'll ask you, but does this relationship enable me to become the person that I'm supposed to be? And I would say this, it should. It should help you grow and develop and deepen. Now, before I move on from this point to number 3, I just want to say a word to those of you who are in what I call non-negotiable relationships. Because some of you heard that and went, yeah, my wife isn't that, or my husband isn't that. So I heard Dave say run, so I'm running, okay? Hang on a second. You entered into a covenant relationship. You made promises in that. Now, abuse is a different thing. I totally get it. And if you were here last week, we talked about that kind of thing, abusive, damaging, those kinds of things. But some of you you're not getting along. It's just hard. It's not the person I thought it'd be, all that stuff that goes on. Let me tell you, God can bring healing to that relationship. So the option of running just really isn't there for you. What do? Well, you begin to really surround yourself with people who will see the truth about you and who can encourage you and speak that into your life. Surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable, who will pray for you. That's why even life groups we talk about, it's something about being around some other people that encourage you in this relationship because you may see God at work in powerful ways, redeeming that relationship. Another part of that is maybe you need to go even deeper. Maybe there are just some deep hurts and wounds in your life that simply aren't going to go away. And maybe you need to seek out a good, solid Christian counselor. Maybe you need to find someone that will help you walk through this well and restore what's been broken. So don't give up, but hold on. The third thing in resetting relationships is trust. I will build stronger trust for lasting relationships. Write that down. I will build stronger trust for lasting relationships. So there are three parts to trust. Here they are. You can build it, you can grow it, or you can repair it. Building trust means you're starting from scratch. And in any relationship, you have a starting point. And maybe you have to do a self-check and ask, am I a trustworthy person? See, we're really good at wanting other people to live up to our expectations and never disappoint us. In other words, we want them to be trustworthy. But the question is this, am I? Am I being a trustworthy person? Am I being the person that God wants me to be? Happiness is not finding the right person, it's being the right person. The second stage is growing trust. And I'm learning you and you're learning me. It's that kind of step. You know about strengths and weaknesses, what makes me tick, and personality and sense of humor and all those kinds of things. So I'm slowly growing into trusting this new relationship more. That's kind of the second phase of that. And then when something's been broken, there's the repairing trust phase. And here's the deal. Repairing trust, I kind of mentioned it just a few minutes ago. It is possible. It's not going to happen overnight. It can be painful. You might shed tears. You could take one step forward and two steps back. It can be challenging, but I will tell you this. It is possible to repair trust that's been broken in a relationship. Trust calls us to be hopeful in our love and relationships. If you're there in 1 Corinthians 13, I want you to look at verse 7. Here's what Paul says about this whole idea of trust. He says, love never gives up. It never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. He's talking about the foundation of deep love and trust in our relationships. Because every healthy relationship is built on this foundation of trust. And repairing trust is built on what we talked about last week. It's built on forgiveness. And it can be hard. And sometimes, to be real honest, sometimes it's just never the same again. And some of you know that. Some of you have been wounded deeply by a friend, and maybe you've restored that. You've asked forgiveness. They've forgiven, whatever direction it went on, but it's just not the same again. Sometimes that's the case, unfortunately. But trust can be repaired. And sometimes, you know what? Trust is broken because we have unreasonable expectations. Don't raise your hand, but you've had some of those, right? You expected things of people that was unreasonable of them, and then when they didn't meet them, you just kind of wrote them off, and you felt your trust was broken. But it was because you were holding them way up here. We expect another person in our life to simply be our everything, and nobody can do that. Nobody can be that except for God himself. I want to give you a quote from the infamous philosopher Jerry Maguire. You know the movie, Tom Cruise and all that? In the movie, there are 3 famous lines. So I'm going to see how well you do in this. Most famous one is, show me the money. Yes. We're going to start doing that at offering time. But anyway, the second most famous one is, you had me at... You guys are good. And then the third one is that he looks at her and he says, you complete me, right? And that was this moment. And remember, all the women in the room just went, oh, it was so romantic in the movie. Let me just tell you this. Gina and I have been married for 32 years. We have never had a song written about us. There's never been a movie about us or a book about us. We just have each other. And while I love her and know in my heart that she is God's greatest gift to me, she does not complete me. Because no person can do that. She makes me a better man. She enriches my life. I am incredibly blessed. She has brought great things in my life to help move me and motivate me and help. She has been this incredible partner, my best friend. She is my wife, and the greatest gift ever. But if I think that she is going to complete every part of my life that is somehow less than or shallow or whatever it is, I'm setting our marriage up to fail. I'm expecting her to be everything that I'm lacking. It just can't happen. And if you were to ask her the same question, she would tell you that I don't complete her. And it's shocking, I know, but I don't. And I can't. Because there is this God-shaped, kind of void in her heart. And it can't be filled by me. It can't be filled by me. And I'm not supposed to fill it. That's God's job. And to expect a person or a relationship to be the absolute completeness in your life, can I tell you, you are setting that relationship up to fail. So don't expect that of people, because that will be trust broken all over the place. Instead, look for them to be a complement in your life. That's when you find joy. The last thing is this. How do we reset relationships? It's time. Time. I will invest time to deepen relationships. I will tell you this, there is no shortcut to investing time into relationships. And I know for all of us, there are times when relationships get pushed to the side. Why? We're just too busy. We got a lot going on. So if you're there in 1 Corinthians 13 again, back up to verses 4 and 5. Listen to this. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable, and it keeps no record of when it's been wronged. Here's a reality check. Those things that Paul says are what love is all about, those expressions, those actions of love will never happen when the pace of life is too fast. Think about it. How in the world can you be patient if you don't have the time? It is the epitome of patience, right? It means that you are actually giving time to that. And we talk about being demanding and rude and irritable. It's exactly how we act. I'll even be personal. It's exactly how I act when I am squeezed and there is no room and there is no margin in my life. Relationships are built on time. And so how do we make time when we feel pulled in a million directions? Sometimes it's just taking advantage of the time and the seasons we're already in. Because I could give you a whole list of things and some of you would go, that's great, Dave, but I got 3 little kids at home and I'm a single mom, or I got to work 2 jobs. I mean, how in the world do I do that? I know that every season of life is different for all of us. So to make some blanket statement in here would be unfair. That if I'm now an empty nester, which I will just tell you, it is the greatest thing ever. But now being an empty nester, it's like, well, we have a whole different time schedule than we did when we had kids. So I get that. But I think there are a couple of things that could be beneficial for every single person in this room. So I'm going to give you 2 things, okay? So think about these. You can write them down. There's not a spot on your sheet, but just think about this. The first is this. Share a meal together. Share a meal together. I'm not even going to say 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you need to share a meal together. I don't know that works for anybody. Can you once in a while just share a meal together? My aunt and uncle were missionaries in Brazil, and I went down there several times to do some mission stuff with them. And every time I went to their house, it was always this reset of my American time schedule, because everything there slowed way down. Like we'd be ready to do something. Okay, here we go. And all of a sudden they start bringing out more food. It's like, are you kidding me? We just ate like an hour ago. But, they would just slow down and we would have a meal together and they would just enjoy the company and I know it's a cultural thing, but in their culture, it's not about what you can move on to next. It's about what's happening right here, right now in front of you. It really is about people. And I read a statistic that said the average American eats dinner in 6 minutes. 6 minutes. It used to be around 45 minutes. People would talk and hang out and do that. 6 minutes. So I shared this with you several years ago. I had a great idea for a money-making fast food restaurant, no tables. It's called the Squat and Gobble. And so I shared that, and I've always thought that was the funniest thing, And then guess what? a restaurant opened up called the Squat and Gobble. So someone stole my idea and did that. But I think you had no tables or anything else, just hand them their food and they just have to eat it on the run. But that's what we're getting to. But let me just say, this isn't a diatribe against fast food because I know they serve a purpose. But here's the question. Do we ever slow down to share a meal? Do we ever slow down? See, the Bible even talks about meals that they're not just fuel for the body, but they're fuel for the soul. So figure out a time when you, whether it's as a couple or a family or whatever your situation is, whether it's with friendships, that you're gonna actually have some time to share a meal together. The second thing I would just challenge you with is this, to take a break from being online. Take a break from being online. Put the phone down, turn the TV off, put the iPad away, breathe in, breathe out. Find peace and joy and laughter in the moment because relationships grow deep when we take the time to invest and to cultivate in them. And here's my thing. Maybe today is the day God is calling you to do an intentional reset of your relationships. Maybe your relationships have been this compulsive drive to please others and you work so hard to make sure that everyone is happy and yet your heart is empty. Or maybe it's the opposite and you think relationships are about what you want and what you can get and you latch onto people hoping that they'll complete you in some way and you are just as empty. And maybe that sounds familiar and maybe that's your story. Well, I'd like to tell you that you're not alone. But God has something better for you today. He wants to speak truth to you and to bring life to where you found yourself empty. And it begins when we press that reset button on our relationship with him and then the relationships in our life. Would you bow your heads with me? Close your eyes. Father, we are so grateful today that relationship was so pivotal and vital to you. From the very beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis, when we read how you came down and you walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening. Why? Because the relationship mattered. And when our world was broken and we were broken, you sent your very own son to go to a cross and to pay the price so that we could be reconciled to relationship with you. It's always been about relationship. God, unfortunately, we've made it about religion and a host of other things, but your desire is a renewed relationship with you, and then that our relationship with those in our life, spouse, friends, children, parents, co-workers, you desired those relationships to be healthy and strong. But God, I know that in this room, all of us have been wounded and hurt by relationships. So Lord, I pray that you would begin to do a healing work in us, that we would begin to live selflessly. We'd begin to extend grace and kindness and mercy. God, we would be not just people who demand trust, but we would live as trustworthy people. God, that you would allow us to slow down, to engage with the people who mean the most to us right around us. So God, give us wisdom, give us strength, hold us accountable on this, that we could live out these relationships in a way that honors and glorifies you. We thank you, we love you, and we pray all this tonight in Jesus' name.